In this video, we're going to talk about some fun and helpful tools that you can use to make your workflow easier and to make better, cooler things. So before we look back at making the shape, I'm going to take a brief break just to show you some of these tools away from a specific project. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is how you can break shapes apart. Let's make a rectangle. And I want to make this pink. I'm going to make the stroke green. I'm going to make the stroke thick. Okay, now when we want to break shapes apart, you can do that either by, let's say, adding a point and then, let's say, deleting the point. Now we have two lines. That didn't really do anything helpful. So what I'm going to do is use the eraser tool. The eraser tool is nested under the scissors tool. That's going to be the next thing we look at. Okay, so the eraser tool erases the middle, or whatever I've hit gets erased, and it's creating these closed shapes. We can tell that they're closed because the outline is covering the whole thing. So kind of turn this into a little puzzle piece. I'm going to duplicate this by holding Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC. And now I'm going to show you what happens when you use the scissor tool. So we're going to use the scissor tool. We're going to click and click. We've cut the shape in two, but we've made two open shapes. You can tell that it's open because the stroke doesn't go the whole length of the shape. There's no path here for the stroke to follow. So you can use the eraser tool to create whole shapes, and you would use the scissors to create open shapes. And they both do different things. They're both pretty useful. As a note, you can always close an open shape by hitting the point, the open point. So click the open point and then hold Shift, and then click the other point. Holding Shift allows you to select multiple things at the same time. And then we can go to Object, it should be Path, and then Join. And that joined the shape. And then we can also always open a whole shape by hitting Delete. Now we've opened the shape. So you can always turn a closed shape into an open one and vice versa. Okay, so those are ways that you can break your shapes apart. Let's delete some stuff. Let's talk about how you can make things combined. So let's say we wanted to make, I don't know, something weird. Okay, we have this together. These are three shapes. I'm going to change the colors just to bring something home. So these are all different shapes. Okay, if we go here to the Pathfinder tool, now I've put this aside in the very first Illustrator video that we did, but if you didn't do that at the time, you can find Pathfinder under Windows, and everything is alphabetical. So you would just see Pathfinder, and you can just open it there. If you don't have it nested, it's just going to float. Pathfinder has lots of different options that you can do, and I suggest playing around with them because they're pretty interesting. But the main thing that I want to bring your attention to is this one right here, Unite, turns them into one shape. So let's say over here with my canister, let's say I want this and this to be one shape. They're the same color, so they may as well be the same shape. And then I unite them, and now instead of two shapes, I have one shape. Okay, let's go back here. Other things that you can do, you can cut things apart using the Pathfinder tool. Here, this one over here, minus is front. So we just cut that shape out, and over here, let's see how that could be useful for us. So here, I made this shape the whole way around. But look here, it actually only looks to be over here. So let's say I wanted to do it a little bit differently. I'm actually just going to turn layer 2 off, and I'm going to work on layer 3 just because I don't want to mess up what I have. So I'm just going to use an ellipse. Let's give it a blue outline. Let's take away the stroke. V to get the selection tool, and now I can modify my shapes. Okay, so this gives us the basic outline of the shape, and now I want to get this shape as its own thing. So I'm going to hit Command or Control C, then Command or Control F, and I just move this along like that. And now I'm going to want, see, look, if we hit these two and I go like that, now we have this moon shape, but I've lost the background shape. So I'm actually going to undo that. That's Command or Control Z. And then I can Command or Control C, Command or Control F. Now I've got two there, so when I do this and I cut these apart, I'll still have one left. There we go. So I can make this filled in and this one not filled in. So that's why that can be useful. It adds some pretty cool depth. So you can use shapes to cut against other shapes. You can also, let's say here, you can subtract the filter, produce no results. Okay, so let's try this one. There, so what it did was it left the Venn diagram part. So like the overlapping parts is what it leaves behind. Sometimes you might want that shape. Basically, whatever these icons do, that's what the tool will do. You can usually take a pretty educated guess. Now I want to talk about, these are the shape modes. Let's talk about the paths. And this is going to get into how I deal with, let's turn this off, how I deal with the top part over here that I kind of neglected earlier. Okay, so let's say I have a line. We can get the line tool for this. Okay, now if I select this line and these shapes and I use, let's say, divide, it's going to divide my shape by the line. So wherever the line is, it's going to break these two apart into two things. Now it still considers it one shape, so you would need the direct selection tool to move the other half. Let's see what happens when I use a different tool. So I have this all selected and I'm going to use trim. So that just trimmed out the paths. We merged the paths. Here we just cropped it and we're just left with a path. And this didn't do anything for us because of how we are. So when you're trying to think of what you can do with these, just play around until you get the result you're looking for. Now let me show you practically how this plays out over here. Okay, so let's get rid of some fills. I'm gonna put on colored strokes. So we can see through things. And I'm also going to turn this, here we can just swap it. Okay. Ooh. If you ever lose your document, like you accidentally end up here, just hit Command or Control 0 and that will recenter you. Okay, so here we are. Now I want this shape to be divided by this line. So what I'm going to do is V to select it. Now Control or Command C to copy it, Command or Control F to paste it in place. I think I accidentally I only did one segment of the line because I was using the direct selection tool when I selected. So I just copy and pasted. Now I'm going to use a line. Okay, now I have my line selected. And I'm gonna fill this in just so it's easier to see the results. And I'm going to give it a stroke so it's easier to see the results. Okay, so we have our line, we have our shape, and now I'm going to hit, that's the wrong thing, I want to hit trim or divide. I wanted to hit divide. Now I'm going to actually delete, so I'm using, note that I want to use the direct selection tool so I can delete this half of it. There we go. Now I have this half that I can make, let's say I want to make that white. I don't need a stroke at all. This can be, this we wanted to be white, so I guess this would be black. Let's look at it. So I'm just examining the shape. When in doubt, just look back at your reference picture and see what you're looking at. So this is going to be dark, this is going to be light. So we're going to make this. I'm going to hit I so I can start selecting my light spots. And if this is going to be dark in contrast to this, then these will need to be white. So let's make these white. Okay, we're gonna make these white. We're gonna make this dark. And we're gonna make this dark. Now we're missing an inside line here. So I'm just gonna look at what I did earlier. So last time I did this, I actually made this whole thing white. I'm not sure that I like that when I'm looking at it now because I think that this looks pretty good. So I'm actually just going to add a white outline. Okay, and I think that looks better than it did the other way. Now another thing that we can do here is instead of having these full-on shapes, I can use that Pathfinder subtract front thing to create the indication of the shapes. So I'm dragging out a second one. I want this one to be in front, so we're left with that shape. So let's hit Command or Control Shift, right bracket, select both of these. I'm holding Shift, that's what lets me select both, and then minus front. There we go. And now instead of having this whole little thing, instead of having like a whole ellipse, I just have the indication of an ellipse. Now I can duplicate that one. There we go. Now when we look out, we see that this has the indication of a shadow, which kind of implies the rest of the shape, and that looks pretty interesting. So I'm really happy with how that worked. This video is getting a little bit long, so I'm actually going to cut it in half. In the next video, we're going to look at the handle, and I'm going to go through a few more helpful, fun tools.